I'm going to invite you all to listen to an extraordinary woman who'll be speaking about how she's grown her personal brand into a successful entrepreneurial endeavor. So please welcome to the stage, Jenny Lorenzo.
Oh my goodness.
Can you take hold of
Hi
this?
everybody.
Can you give it
Hello. I'm like, I don't know where to sit. I guess I'll sit here. Aveda, we're good
Ay,
here.
perfecto.
Thank you. I'm still jet lagged, even though I've been here for like 5 days already.
Well, Jenny, it's great to be with you here today. My name is Alejandro Gonzalez. I am the Executive Director of the Idea Center at Miami Dade College. We're right there. And after this chat, Jenny will continue with us at the booth for more of a Q&A. So feel free to join us once we're done here at the Miami Dade College booth, where we'll continue the conversation in more of a Q&A format with the audience. We're so excited that you are back in Miami.
Thank you.
Jenny is an MDC alum, so we are very, very proud that she is a shark
MDC.
from the Kendall campus.
Kendall campus.
So we're very excited. The Idea Center at Miami Dade College works with our students and our community to make sure that we are helping entrepreneurs have access to the resources and the education that they need to take their work and their businesses to the next level. And part of that is to be able to showcase the work of entrepreneurs themselves, folks who have started their work, who are growing their businesses, growing their brand, and be able to have that be showcased as an inspiration for other entrepreneurs and lessons learned for other entrepreneurs in our community. We are very excited that Jenny's here with us today because we see her on Instagram more on a role that you can share a little bit about as well for those who may not be familiar. But in addition to that, you are an entrepreneur in a sense. And I would like to start the conversation by asking you, do you see yourself as an entrepreneur in the work that you are doing?
Initially, when I signed on to be here today and I saw entrepreneur next to my name, I felt like an imposter because I never thought of myself as an entrepreneur. I just knew that I was doing everything that I did, everything that I have done up until this point was out of necessity. Not just for my own career and my livelihood, but for the culture, for representing Cubans, for representing Latinos, for representing Miami in all its authenticity. But by doing that, I have created something, and I've created my own brand, and I've made a living, a complete living doing this. So yes, I guess in the grand scheme of things, I guess I am an entrepreneur.
That exactly, and we are all entrepreneurs in our own way. So, as you set out to create this brand, we see the finished product when we're looking at it online. Can you walk us through kind of behind the scenes, the making of this brand that is now over 1 million people across the world watching you, and that you are representing not only yourself, but, like you said, a culture, a very specific culture that is a Cuban culture, especially a Cuban culture here in Miami?
Yes, so it's been quite a long journey. It's a very long process of how I've gone from point A to point B. But I always knew I wanted to be an entertainer, but it was just an actor. You know, I just like to make people laugh and play different characters, but it didn't hit me to go beyond acting and learn how to wear multiple hats like video editing, writing, directing, producing, etc. When I started to audition as a teenager, like late teens, I started to audition and I didn't look like J-Lo. And you could only look like J-Lo to sell Colgate. And then I was like, well, I guess I'm gonna have to write the roles for myself. So that's how it started. It was like I became a filmmaker by necessity. I didn't grow up looking at Jurassic Park and wanting to be the next Steven Spielberg. I just wanted to be on all that on Nickelodeon and just play all these wacky characters, right? Like Mad TV, SNL. But then when I saw that there were not any roles for someone like me, because I'm not Latina enough for Hollywood standards, but then I'm also not white enough, whatever that means. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to do this myself, roll up my sleeves, do it myself. So that's why, after I did my time at Miami Dade College for theater, which, by the way, helped me immensely, because it wasn't just the education I received there, but also through the Miami Dade College theater program, I started working with a professional theater company. And it's like, things just happen, It's weird how things just start to unfold and just allowing the universe to guide you, but it was through that company that I then decided I need to go into film. And then I went to the University of Miami. I felt like I was late to the game in terms of YouTube because I was still, I'm gonna age myself, but who cares? I'm a vieja, it's fine. YouTube started around 2005, right? I could be wrong, but it started very early, and I really wanted to make YouTube videos, but I was too scared. I was like, no one's gonna watch me. Who wants to see me talk to the camera? I don't have expensive equipment. I don't have the money. So I didn't start making YouTube videos until after I graduated and I met up with a friend and we decided, let's just do it. And with a crappy little web camera, yeah, with a crappy little web camera and like the windows from my bedroom in Huechete, I just started talking to the camera and learning as I went. So a lot of stuff was still self-taught. I didn't learn how to edit in film school. I learned how to edit on my own. And that's what I tell people. There's a lot of stuff you can learn on your own. I learned Photoshop on my own, and Adobe Premiere and Final Cut Pro. And so it's one of those things where a lot of people say, oh, I can't start yet because I don't have the right camera. I don't have the right equipment. You gotta just start. Because if you don't start, you're not gonna learn as you go. Because if I look at my first video now, I'm like, what is that? That's terrible. Horrible editing, horrible lighting. I was wearing this crappy wig, but that's fine, because I still wear crappy wigs. But, it was really bad. I was like, why did I think this was okay? But that is how that's what got me to start, was that there weren't enough roles. I didn't feel represented. The only thing on TV was the George Lopez show. And like, ¿Qué pasa USA? Woo! Anybody ¿Qué pasa USA fans? That to me is like the holy grail of, like, that's like my Bible of like I always tell every Cuban in LA, I'm like, have you seen ¿Qué pasa USA? That should be like your baseline.
So again, in entrepreneurship speak, I think we're talking about a minimum viable product, essentially, and we're talking about starting off with very little capital to get things going, but getting things started. So as you then grow, the challenges are different, and the complexity of the work is also different, right? So how did you make that leap? Because what we're seeing now is more professional. It's probably a team of people behind it. How was that leap from starting off in Huechete con la camarita to now over and doing a more professional con todos los periquitos?
It was a pretty slow climb. I started to build like a very small fan base. And by the way, this channel that I'm talking about isn't what you see of me today. It wasn't Latino content, it wasn't character. I was like reviewing video games and comic books and talking about like the next Superman. And I was just like a regular geek girl on the internet, and comments were like, get back in the kitchen. I was like, okay, fine. So that's what that was like my life before, but that's how I introduced the Abuela character. But people don't know that. People think Abuela started at BuzzFeed. She started on the Aggressive Comics channel as a superhero to review the movie Kick-Ass 2. And I think that ignited something in me because obviously I'm a big nerd. I love geek culture, but something was missing. I was like, I'm not entirely happy just making this content. Because first of all, I was just talking to camera. I wasn't acting. I wasn't playing different characters. And back when I was in film school, I would make telenovela parodies, and like a lot of my comedy was about my culture. So I felt like I needed to bring it back around to that. So when I started forming this small but loyal fan base, I did a GoFundMe, they donated. That's how I was able to attain better equipment the second time around. Because again, my parents could not help me. We are a low middle class family, Cuban immigrants, like we did not have that. So I had to essentially gain the trust of my audience to the point that they wanted my content to look better, and so they donated. So that's how I was able to upgrade to like a DSLR camera and like, you know, so it's like little by little. It wasn't from one day to the next. And even till this day, I'm constantly trying to upgrade my equipment. And it's something that I'm able to do now because of the 10 plus years that I've been at it and I've been making a living doing this, that I can now invest in myself in that way. But it was still a very slow process, and I say that because, again, I've seen so many wonderfully talented people give up very easily because they're frustrated that they don't have all the means to do it.
That makes sense. And so now you're at a different stage of growth. You had your friends and family around that early on with your GoFundMe. You've then had to invest in your business in different ways. And now you've built different revenue streams and you make a living out of this work. That makes you, as the name suggests on this platform, a content entrepreneur. Can you talk to us a little bit more about that business model for you? How is Jenny Lorenzo as a company, right, making money?
Yes, I know a lot of people wonder this because they're like, what is this girl doing? She just wears pelucas for a living, like that's all she does, and she makes money from that. I think, again, everyone's path is different. So when I moved to LA, my first job was at BuzzFeed. That's where I created Pero Like alongside some other wonderful peers of mine. And that platform is huge, especially back then. Like BuzzFeed was like, everyone talked about it. It allowed me this platform of millions of people. So from there, after BuzzFeed, I went to Me Too, which is another digital media network that specifically focuses on Latino content. And it was after that that I took the leap to go on my own. And that's when I decided to create my character universe outside of just an Abuela character. And it's not like I had 1 million followers on Instagram. I still don't. I have 1 million across the platforms, but I didn't have the popularity of like LeJuan James or Lily Singh or anything. But because my content is so specific and there isn't a lot of Latina comedians, much less Caribbean Latina comedians, brands would approach me a lot. And that is my #1 source of income. Out of everything that I do right now, even voice acting for animation, hosting for Disney Plus, my main source of income is still branded content. So that's my main revenue stream. Other creators make their revenue from views. For me, it's like not a lot. Not a lot comes from that. Because you have to be hitting millions and millions of views per video to make like a salary enough to make that your only source of income. So it's almost like I've gotten into marketing in a weird way.
Right.
And I used to want to be a writer for commercials because I used to love all the weird Skittles commercials, and I'm like, oh, I want to write weird commercials. So now in a weird way, it's kind of come around where I've worked with like TurboTax, Skittles, Totino's, AT&T, like all these major brands have reached out to work with me, and it's fun because I get to utilize my characters. I'm like, oh, which character is gonna sell Mucinex, you know? And it's like, I try, and I care so much about my audience, so I try to make sure that the brand aligns with me,
Right.
and also that the video is still gonna be funny, and it's still gonna be entertaining, so that my audience still enjoys it, even though I am trying to sell a product for the brand that I'm working for.
Yeah. But you did not start selling the branded content, and you did theater, you love the entertainment piece of it. How did you figure out how to price the right amount of products, how to build that deck to really make money out of your work?
It honestly, I learned from other friends of mine who, like Lejuan, right? Like me and Lejuan worked on a Honda campaign when I was still at Me Too. And I saw how much he made from one campaign. I was like, I need to leave now. I need to go off on my own. So it was being inspired by other creators and seeing, he just did something for JetBlue. And this other person just did something for McDonald's. And I'm like, okay. So I already kind of saw what was going on because I studied other creators and I'm friends with other creators. And so I knew I had a manager at the time, and having a manager is very important, especially when you're in this line of work. So they negotiate everything for you because I did not know my worth. And I probably would have been making peanuts on a campaign if it wasn't for having a manager who taught you your worth. They're like, no, you're worth this much. And it was wild to me, but I already knew what to expect. I just didn't think, again, I have imposter syndrome like crazy. I still do. I have a lot of self-doubt. I'm being real.
Thank you for that. And that's very
I'm being
important.
real.
The
I don't know
level
why
of
I'm even sitting
vulnerability
here.
is very important. Absolutely.
Like half the time I'm like, why does anybody want to hear my story? But it's true. Like así soy yo.
Claro.
I don't know what it is. It's the hustle mentality and but I still keep going. I don't let that stop me, but it's there. It's always like a little voice,
You've mentioned community several times throughout this conversation. One is your audience and how that is such an important community for you. And then now the community of creators and like-minded individuals that you've built around that. Can you talk to us a little bit more about how important is it when you are producing this type of content to build a meaningful relationship, right, with so much noise out there, with your audience, a trusting relationship with your audience, and with peers who are doing similar work?
When it has come to my audience from the very beginning, even when I was at BuzzFeed, I would read all the comments. I know they tell you not to, but you have to sometimes. If you're making identity-based content, there's no way around it because you need to know if you're doing something wrong, if you're doing something right. Of course, you can't please everyone, but for the most part, if you're making this identity-based content that's about your culture, that's about your hometown, you want to know, are they getting it? Are they relating to it? Is this authentic enough? And so I read all the comments. I would try to engage as much as possible. I've done a lot of live performances. I've met a lot of people in person. I've connected. And claro, it gets overwhelming because there's all these social platforms and you get all these DMs, but even if I can't respond, I read as much as I can to soak in, how are people feeling about a video when I release it? How are they feeling overall? How are they being affected by the content? And I started to realize, because ultimately, comedy was number one. That's the number one goal, right? Is make people laugh. But then I started to notice from the messages that I received from people that this was beyond comedy. This was also I felt seen for the first time. I don't see this on television. Or especially with the Abuela character, a lot of people say that it reminds them of their Abuela, especially if they're no longer here. And the character's based on my Abuela, who's no longer here. So by me doing that character, I'm keeping her alive. I'm keeping her memory alive. But to see that other people feel the same way about her is it's a lot, And you get it's a lot to take in that you suddenly have more responsibility than you thought you had. That it's beyond comedy. But I see everyone who interacts with my videos. I truly see them as family. I always say my long lost primos and primas.
Bueno, míralos
that's
aquí.
how
They're
all of you guys.
Exactly.
Because it's true. I feel like if we were all meet and hang out and eat dinner, we would get along and become friends. That's just how it. I don't the word fans is weird. I don't know. It's it's people who watch me, my audience, my supporters. To me they're like family because when I do meet them in person, it's not like I'm Justin Bieber. You know what I mean? It's ay, yay, mwah, mwah. It's like a tia that I just met for the first time. It doesn't feel like so it's very special to me, keeping that communication open. I take suggestions a lot from the audience.
Okay.
I like to keep them involved. in the characters and the chisme of the universe and everything. Because I like to listen because this is not just for me, this is for them.
Right.
So I want to make sure that they're happy with what they're getting from the content. And when it comes to my peers, believe it or not, my team is still very small. I don't know if whoever does watch my videos, do you know Primo Kevin? Anybody know who I'm talking about? Primo Kevin? Yes. Primo Kevin is like my good friend Kevin Bosch. He's Venezuelan Colombian. He's from Miami. We became friends here when he worked at like O Cinema. But it wasn't until he moved to LA that we started kind of working together. And I was like, you really get this. Let's do it. So now he's my creative partner. But a lot of the time, it's him shooting, lighting, doing sound.
Wow.
It's just the two of us a lot of the times. And a lot of people tend to think I have a whole team of like 10 plus people. And I don't. It only happens when I do a really big video. And then I get more hands on deck. But for the most part, it's just me and like 2 other people tops. And that's it. But we've created this like wonderful environment where we just really support each other. We have the same mission. And this also applies to people that I act with, like the Chonga girls, who I do a lot of video content with, a lot of friends that I met over there. We just all kind of have this shared passion for the culture and the representation and comedy.
Yeah.
So it's really nice getting to work together because it's like hanging out with your friends, working, and then we always get into like these passionate discussions about representation.
Right.
So it's just really, really nice. I'm very happy with that.
I want to ask you, before we started the presentation, you heard from a family, so 3 generations that watch you and are part and interact with your content in a different way. How does that make you feel, that you're able to translate into so many different generations, and not just Cuban culture, right? But now you're doing things more across the United States with other like-minded individuals from other cultures.
From the very beginning, I always wanted to represent my culture. Obviously, I'm Cuban-American from Miami. I write what I know, and I'm writing about my personal experiences. But when I moved to LA and I started working at BuzzFeed, the reason why I wanted to start Pero Like was because there was 0 Latino representation at such a big company like this. And when Pero Like was finally formed, it was just like 4 of us. And I was like, where are the Afro-Latinos? Okay, we need to hire someone. And we brought in Gadiel del Orbe, who's an Afro-Latino Dominican from New York, who was stationed in San Diego when he was a Marine. And and to me, that's always been my mission. I want to represent my people, but I also want to represent as much of Latin America as possible. A lot of the writing that I do, a lot of the bigger sketches, like my last Thanksgiving sketch, because every year I do this like annual Thanksgiving sketch, and it's a lot of yeah.
We have someone.
Tuve los Thanksgiving sketches. And we had like so many different friends of mine, actors from different parts of Latin America. My friend Henry, who's Afro-Nicaraguan. I had my friend Christina, who's Mexican. My husband, who's Peruvian, Puerto Rican. Like, we had all these people, and like there was the big debate about which were the right tamales.
Yeah, I remember
You know,
that.
and like Fidelia, who's played by a Puerto Rican actress. And that brings me joy. So for me, it's like, claro, I'm gonna tell my own stories as a Cuban, but I also wanna make sure I'm representing as much as possible, because by that type of representation, you're also like low-key educating.
Right.
It's because unfortunately, something that I've learned from reading the comments, especially when I was at BuzzFeed and Me Too with the millions of comments, is that a lot of people still think we're all the same.
Yeah.
And we're not. We have a lot of similarities, but we're also very different. And that's good to embrace that. And I think a good example of that is Disney's Encanto.
Absolutely.
Because it's about Colombian culture, but it's showcasing all the skin colors. And that's just what I'm trying to bring about. And that's been my mission from day one.
Bueno, te voy a hacer una pregunta en español, and that definitely deserves a hand of applause. Y para terminar, te pregunto en español. Jenny Lorenzo, ¿es latina? ¿Es cubana? ¿Es cubana-americana? ¿Es algo más?
Yo siempre digo que soy cubana-americana, porque de verdad soy los dos. Nací aquí en Hialeah, que yo siempre digo, ¡hey, Hialeah! Agua, fango y factoría. And then I was raised in Westchester. ¡Hey! You have to say it like that, Westchester. Cuando yo digo Westchester, creen que estoy hablando de Nueva York. I'm like, no, Westchester. Y I was surrounded by cubanos y latinos, haitianos, y yo diciendo que solamente soy americana no trabaja para mí. Porque, ¿cómo se dice? How do you say raised in Spanish? Tú ves que yo no hablo español perfecto. Me crié. I knew that, but I forgot right now. Me crié cubana, hablando español con mis abuelos en la casa, pero después aprendí inglés con Looney Tunes and Pee-wee. And Pee-wee, does anybody remember him? Pero después cuando fui para el colegio, pero también todas mis maestras eran latinas y todos los estudiantes también, la mayoría eran latinos. Entonces esa es mi cultura y más aquí en Miami. Es una cosa que si te críes aquí en Miami, you're more connected, estás más conectado con la cultura, porque yo he conocido muchos latinos recientemente que dicen que no aprendieron español ni nada porque sus padres, they wanted them to assimilate because they're not from a place like Miami.
Right.
So, sí, siempre digo, más que latina o hispana, yo siempre digo que soy cubana-americana.
And just my last question, how do you feel knowing that you are able to be an entrepreneur out of what makes you, what you're passionate about and what makes you most authentically yourself?
For me, it's been an amazing ride. Sometimes I find it hard to believe that I even do this for a living. And it's still frustrating because my next goal is to work in television. So my goal is not to stay on the internet forever. I'm not going to stop. I think I'm still going to keep at it. I love my audience online. But the ultimate goal is to take these stories and bring them to television, whether it's live action or animation. And it's always going to be about being my most authentic self, and I'm willing to continue to fight the good fight because that's still being out there and being surrounded by people who are trying to create shows or have created shows. They still are trying to water our stories down. I don't know why. I think ultimately a lot of executives at networks and streaming platforms are scared that if you're too Latino, you're gonna scare people away because no one's gonna get it. But that's not true. And I know that's not true because of what I do for a living, what I've seen audiences like LeJuan James's audience, like
Right.
the Chonga Girls, all these Latino content creators, their fans are not 100% Latino.
Nope.
They're from all over the world, from different backgrounds. They read the subtitles, that's it. We all saw Squid Game. It's a Korean show. It was #1 on Netflix. There's no reason why our stories can't be told as authentically as a Que Pasa USA, where you switch from English to Spanish like nothing. That should be fine. So that's the ultimate goal here. It's like, yeah.
Well, Jenny, Miami is proud of you. Miami Dade College is proud of you, and I would like for all of you to help me in thanking you for being here with us today.
Yes, and if I could take a point of privilege here, just for 1 second. First of all, I want to thank Alejandro for inviting Jenny, and for Miami Dade College hosting Jenny here. I actually have my children, my wife, and my suegra Cuban-Abuela here.
The real one, the OG.
The OG. And they were more impressed that we were able to get you to come here than Serena Williams as the opening keynote. And I would say even more excited because, Jenny, you represent, you are a hometown success story. I want to thank you for putting yourself out there, for being your authentic self. I want you to know that your hometown here is so proud of you. And I want to say also on a personal level, yeah, let's give her a round of applause. this pandemic, the last 2 years, were difficult years. And many of us were locked in our homes. And for our family, many times we sought the comic relief that was necessary to be able to get through the day off of your content. And we're just so appreciative. We welcome you back whenever you want to come back, and hopefully one day to call Miami home again. Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you so much. That was so sweet of you. Oh my goodness. Thank you all for coming and watching.
And please join us at the Miami Dade College booth for more Q&A with Jenny. And pictures, because we got to keep going here.